upside down. I always wanted to do a message upside down, but it's a thought, isn't it? Happy Father's Day.
Do it any way you want.
What?
Do it any way you want.
Yep, it's true. Well, I sort of did this. First of all, Malcolm, thank you for being here. Okay? You're incredible, wonderful, beautiful. There's a lot of more adjectives, but I'll save them for next time you're here. And Ken, I was reading this thing about your dad, wouldn't it? They honored him in Memphis and named a street after him, right? I mean, what a deal. He had done so many things.
Tell us more.
What?
Tell us more about it.
Well, would you like to say anything else about it?
I brought the proclamation.
You can read that. Yeah, I read it this morning, and it was just overwhelming. It would take 30 minutes, really, to go through every deal. It's amazing, isn't it? Dr. Charles Dinkins. And besides pastoring a church, he served on many, many committees. I mean, it was like 40 some odd. You know, everything that I read is just like someone who expanded beyond any reason, you know. And so, I mean, I really appreciate just getting to read about somebody that I really didn't know much about. But that's good. Well, talking about upside down, I didn't get the message about the change in the title, you know, and so everything about the music is sort of designed. The Perfect Will of God is what that I had turned in a long time ago, and then somehow or other I didn't. It's all about me. My error. I mean, nobody. It wasn't Pat's. It wasn't artists, but just mine. But I sort of changed that. But then I got to thinking about it, you know, and this is Prosperous, Abundant Living Part 2. That is the perfect will of God for us when you think about it. So I'm really pretty happy with the way everything turned out. And I wouldn't have changed anything about the music. I looked it all over, and there's not one little change I would make. I love it. Here's a thing that I probably have never said, or maybe I have and just forgot it, but do you know that in experiencing abundance, especially in the material or the financial part of it, you know, there's not a lot of people like, say, for example, one of my favorite people in the whole world is Warren Buffett. And he just has some kind of magic about finances and everything. And then there are some of you I know that are really very good in that area. But then I think the reason I guess I talk about abundance and prosperity so much is then there's a whole bunch of people like me, a little ditzy in finance, you know. Now, if it could have been some other way, I mean, when I started back into construction after leaving the Southern Baptist ministry, one day, the guy that I was working for asked me what kind of things I studied. And I said, well, I took a course in Shakespeare. I took another course where you interpret Old English or Anglo-Saxon into modern English. And he was saying, yeah, he said, you're probably, at the time that he said that, I was sort of helping the concrete finishers finish up. He said, you're probably the only concrete finisher in America that can translate Anglo-Saxon into modern English. So that tells you a little bit about what I studied and what I did in life. And I've never made a budget. I never wrote one down or anything. I just, whatever happens that week happens. But what I decided on, don't laugh too hard. What I decided on was that I would just sort of turn everything over to Spirit, and I would try to be as obedient to what I felt at the moment. And it's just like somebody was asking me about, they say, we heard you bought another house to fix up. And I told them, I said, well, yes, but the real flaw in what we do is we do too much. But maybe that's not bad, because I want the other person to have a wonderful experience out of what we've done. So, I mean, in a way it makes sense, but it doesn't really make great financial sense. You see what I'm saying? But there is a way to survive, and I think I'm living proof of it, of being absolute. I don't want to use the word idiot. That's horrible. Well, a debt, do you like that? In finances. And still seem to have everything that just keeps flowing in to us. So I really believe in the ideas that I've been sharing with you over the period of time. Listen to this, because he's one of people. Charles Fillmore had a lot to say about that, and I like the way he managed through the Depression. I've read quite a bit about that. But Charles Fillmore saw the financial part of prosperity like this. He said, to have an adequate supply at all times, an even flow that is never enough to become a burden, yet always enough to meet every need and every demand. And then he added, we must make union with spirit who knows how to handle ideas of substance. So in a sense, that's what we teach in Unity, is that we take ideas and we depend on spirit to turn those ideas into substance. Now, Jesus also had something very interesting to say about this. Look at the birds of the air. This is from the Sermon on the Mount, the version in Matthew, 6th chapter. Look at the birds of the air. They do not sow or reap or stow away in barns, yet their heavenly Father feeds them. Are you much more valuable than they? And then he said, see how the lilies of the field grow. They do not labor or spin, yet I tell you that not even Solomon in all his splendor was dressed like one of these. And then he added, if that is how God clothed the grass of the field, will he much more clothe you? So in essence, he was saying, don't make that the centerpiece of your worry about all of the material things. Now, here's the thing. When we arrived on the planet, we didn't come with all the stuff physically, materially, like we didn't have a suitcase that day that we were born full of stuff, did we? We didn't have all the things we would need. If I'd had everything that day that I would ever need, I would be driving a 1935 Ford. Think about that. I'm glad we waited for a while. I like the version. This is from Deepak Chopra, who said, when we arrive on the, however, everything we will ever need or desire in life comes with us. Okay. Now, we arrive, and this is the key point that he's making, we arrive as unlimited potential seeking expression. I like that. Unlimited potential. That means it's all invisible right at that moment, but that as we go along in life, it keeps developing. So, when we think about the will of God or the abundance of God, think about this now. Did you ever pray a prayer that said, I really want my children to go through a lot of hardship? That's not what we do, is it? I mean, but think about this, because there are those that have the philosophy that that's really sort of the will of God for some, but that's really not. That's really not, because it is just, everything is so already there. But keep this in mind then. We want for our children the very best, don't we? We want the best experience in life that they could have. To me, that's really prosperity. It's like having it all, having everything available, and that's part of the God experience. whether you call it the will of God or whatever. I watched Friday night King Lear, and one of the little remarks that Shakespeare makes, he's really making fun of people who blame things, but a man is saying there, well, if I make a mistake, it's something about the stars aren't lined up right, you know, or if I do this or that, he was saying it's something about the planets. And he said, I've always got something to blame. That in essence is what he said, that we can just always blame it on the stars. The thing that is so important is not ever thinking that whatever we're doing, that if things go wrong, that has to do with the energy of the universe or with God not liking who we are or what we're doing. If we can just bring all of this into focus, God is always drawing us to a better experience. Even if we have tons of money or tons of health, there's always all of these areas, because the main thing is that we get a happy, joyous experience out of everything that we have. Sometimes we just so take things for granted. I don't know how we do that. But I find myself at times, now really I'm beginning to wake up a little bit and say, oh, I notice all of these little things. And it's amazing how many things, if you're really thinking about it, you see that is like an expression of God. This morning, I had something really to be thankful about. I woke up at 12:15 after sleeping about 3 hours, and fortunately, I went back to sleep and slept a long time. And so when I woke, I was concerned that I would come to church, you know, and just with that 3 hours, but it was something to be extremely thankful about. You can't believe how many times I said thank you because I know that spirit is in the cells of my body and in the cells of my brain, and spirit is just like everywhere, all the time, every moment, and on our side, supporting us. Okay, now, what we have to determine in ourselves, and this is something that has to overcome sometimes the subconscious. I know that to confirm this, I went back to read a little bit of Napoleon Hill. Did anybody ever read that book, Think and Grow Rich? But he, plus nearly all of the positive thinkers through the years now, have thought that once you think a certain way and are doing and acting in a certain way, the subconscious takes over and does the doing. Well, now we're beginning to realize, I think, of course, you know, Charles Fillmore always realized, and lots of people of that day and New Thought. But even scientists now are beginning to realize that it's an extension of the universal energy that is within us. And it is the God particle that is making the difference. And so that there is a lot of things happening that are invisible that are all to our advantage. But besides responding to the way we believe, Spirit is also underneath all of that, guiding us to a better life experience. Whereas if we begin to think correctly, even the errors that we make become blessings. Now that's hard to imagine because I've done some good ones. And I'm not going to tell you about them either. I made one or two. But think about this. The God experience turns everything into good if we permit it. If we give permission, everything, whatever's happened, all of the past, if we dwell on the past and we worry about the past and we feel like we needed punishing for it, Spirit accommodates us. It's supportive of us. But the plan is to get us going in that direction that is blessed, that is prosperous, that is abundant, that is the best for us. But God does not push us into this experience. We are permitted this freedom, this ability to make bad, terrible choices. The thing that I love about the story of the prodigal son is that he wanted all of his possessions right then. And he wanted to get away from home and the father. And so he took off into the far country. But the father, it doesn't have any remark that indicates that the father told him, look, now let me give you some advice. There was none of that. It was just giving permission to be as foolish as we would like to be. Jim Anderson made a good remark once that as he was going out the door, and he told me, he said, if we didn't have the Bible or anything, if we just had the story of the prodigal son, we would know everything we needed to know. Did you say that? And, I thought about it a little bit, and I said, there's a lot of truth in that, because I look at my life and I identify with the prodigal in that, if you know the story, I've headed for the far country. I've helped feed the pigs. Well, wait, that sounded wrong. I've lived in the pig pen. That's a better way to say that. And then I said, man, there's got to be a better way. And then I began bit by bit. It's not like it floods over you suddenly, but then bit by bit, you begin to come into a way that is working. And it works financially as well. I can't tell you the details of how, but I know that beginning to release a lot of the things that we have always believed about ourselves. This is what is so important, is to release any negative feeling that we've ever had about ourselves, because we are God, expressing God. This is an important job. And try to imagine how that the Father, it's just like I was talking about our children. It's the same way with Father, Mother, God. This is Father's Day, so at least I brought that up, didn't I? But there would never be anything that would instruct us to live a life of drudgery, a struggle. All of that has to do with the way we have begun to believe, and mostly about ourselves. It's not the thing. I can remember the day when I thought, boy, I really believe in God. I really believe in Jesus. Boy, if we could just believe in Glenn. That's the hard part. Believing in God is the easy part. Believing in Glenn was the hardest part that I ever had to deal with. And knowing that I'm supposed to be a part of the wonderful experience of having it all. That's prosperity. That's abundance. To be healthy, to be happy, to just get up in the morning and just feel joyousness rising up in you. That's what we're supposed to do. We're supposed to feel that. Just getting out of bed knowing that we're alive for another day, and that joy and happiness just bubbles up. This means that we've let go of a lot of other things. The tragedies, the hurts, where the other people have hurt us, where we've hurt other people, all of those things. We just sort of said, it's only the present moment that we really get in touch with God. It's just right in the present. It's not about a future thing. It's not about a past. This exact moment that is so precious. And that's what we do with that moment. And if we want to dwell on something of the past, Spirit blesses us and we just get to do it. But it's our choice. This is why that knowing these things becomes so valuable to us. Just knowing how to think and believe, And it's not a matter of doctrine. I believe Jesus could have landed amidst any religion, and the teachings like the golden rule and things, and loving God and loving your neighbor, all of these things, loving your enemy, all of these things would have worked in any religion, I believe. I mean, They might have killed him, but still, it was a workable thing, wasn't it? So this is what has been so important in my life, and I think that's the reason I talk about it so much, is because in adjusting thinking, then I began to see things that started drawing into my life and people that started showing up. And it was a change. It's just a matter of what we believe and starting out what we believe ourselves to be. But when we see that we're this unique expression of God, and when we say to ourselves, yes, I deserve the best that life can offer. This is what's out there. This is what is supposed to be mine. This is a God plan for my life. It was all there available. And it may just take an adjustment in the way I think in order to achieve it. I think that nature itself, and I see this over and over, but I think that nature itself is wooing us into a loving relationship to where we feel all the benefit of everything about us. And then I think that God has really made things simple. Do you know, I think it's in our mind that we have complicated things. I know for myself, it certainly was. Sometimes I'm up here just speaking for myself, and if you want to listen, I take it, I've always believed that this is the most spiritual group I've ever gotten to talk to. So you have to realize that I'm talking about things that you probably have known for years and years, but I still want to share them because it doesn't hurt to go back over these things. But God, like any father, would want to make things simple. But still then, as simple as it really is out there of just letting go and letting God, we still try to complicate it. Somehow or other, complicate it, because the desire of our heart may be something that contradicts what the perfect thing for myself is. One of the things that Pat and I are dealing with now is whether we should sell a bigger house and scale down to a little or whatever. And Pat said to me yesterday, she said, I wish God could just make this absolutely clear. And I said, well, it is clear for today. We're going to hang out here. So, is that an exact quote or what? But we do sometimes like to get ahead and know enough in advance to at least pack the boxes, don't we? And not wait till somebody else is moving in, and then I've done that before too, though. But here is the bottom line of the whole thing. It's how we think. Even back when people were talking about the subconscious doing the work, instead of now we know the energy that's within us does the work. The subconscious is more just of a garbage can, isn't it? I mean, collecting good and bad. But the idea being is that how we think and how we see our life and how we develop our belief system. We're not exactly part of organized religion, are we? I told somebody that they were saying now, they didn't particularly like organized religion. I said, you'd love harmony. Nobody's more disorganized than we are. That's not true. That isn't true. You're right. No. But I thought it was a good, appropriate answer for the time. The dream that you have as to what life should be, you may have to make some adjustments along the way, because I discovered that things that were detrimental, that turned out to be really tragic nearly, were desires of my life back 40 years ago or 45 years ago or whatever, and that I had to go through some of the experience of what it was like to get that prayer answered in order to then go in another direction. So to stay flexible in our experience is a wonderful thing. But in the midst of that, we are still directing our own fate. And I think that following our dreams is an important thing. I did a little abbreviated part of that, I think, last week, but I want to read the whole thing that Henry David Thoreau, and here's what he said and wrote. If one advances confidently in the direction of his dreams and endeavors to live the life which he has imagined, he will meet with a success unexpected in common hours. He will put some things behind, will pass, and I love this, will pass an invisible boundary. New, universal, and more liberal laws will begin to establish themselves around and within him. Or the old laws be expanded and interpreted in his favor in a more liberal sense. And he will live with the license of a higher order of beings. When I look out here, that's what I see. A higher order of beings. Thank you.